I am a statistic. I'm a female, so I make up about 51% of the American population. I'm an ethnic minority that makes up about 2% of the population, and I'm a female web developer, a woman in tech that makes up about 26% of the American workforce. But being a statistic is nothing new to me. I've been one my entire life. For example, in elementary school, I wasn't so good in math, but I loved science. But you would never know that if you saw me in my classroom. I was that girl with the glasses, whose friends affectionately called a nerd, who sat quietly and would not participate in classroom discussions. I had created an imaginary inner fear that I might say an incorrect answer. So I sat quietly and didn't participate. I was one of the 57% of girls who said that math really wasn't her favorite subject in school. So instead of pursuing science, technology, engineering, and math electives, I pursued the arts. Now don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with the arts. I love the arts. But while I was taking band and three-dimensional design, none of my classmates had any idea that I was at home learning about technology and computer science. I was exploring the bulletin board system and learning about this thing called the World Wide Web. Yes, I was a closet techie. It wasn't until my senior year of high school when I read an article that talked about the World Wide Web and what it could mean for our future that I found my passion. I then spent the next 10 years trying to find a way to merge my love of art, writing, and technology. It finally happened when I enrolled in Spartanburg Technical College at their inaugural web design program. I graduated with honors as a certified web designer, ready to take on the tech world. Now, though, for just a moment, I need you to imagine if my elementary school recognized that I was a statistic. And instead of passively looking at my A's and B's in math and science and imagining that somehow I would break the mold, graduate high school, and be ready to take on the science world, imagine if they saw the need to explain to me just how important STEM education would be, not just throughout my school time, but also as an adult. Imagine if my elementary school looked at their female population and saw what President Obama saw when he said, "One of the things that I really strongly believe in is that we need to have more girls interested in math, science, and engineering. We've got half the population that is way underrepresented in those fields. And that means that we've got a whole bunch of talent not being encouraged the way they need to." Imagine if right here in the Midlands, we could have our elementary school girls participate in single-gender STEM programs as part of their school enrichment classes. But then you may ask, do such programs really work? Well, there's a program out west called Inc Eureka. Now, this program capitalizes on the fact that girls take an interest in design and the environment. So they teach STEM-based classes weekly to these girls along with other events, and they focus on things such as science, engineering, and physics. They found that 52% of the girls agreed or strongly agreed that they knew what types of classes to take in high school if they wanted to have a career in technology and computers. Of the girls surveyed, 72% said that they sort of agreed or really agreed that women were just as good at engineering and science as men were. And in 2013, 100% of the girls that completed the 5-year Eureka program graduated from high school. And from 2008 to 2013, 98% of Eureka participants have gone on to college. Well, what about right here in the Midlands of South Carolina? Well, I have the privilege of being able to work with girls in single-gender settings, teaching programs and web development. For example, last spring at Rice Creek Elementary, I was able to sponsor an after-school coding club. Now, during that first club meeting, I asked girls to write down one word they would use to describe themselves. Several of those girls wrote down the word shy. Do you know, just after a few of our club meetings, those same shy girls were the first ones to jump up and volunteer when we had to make changes to our JavaScript code in the game that we were developing. There was no gender intimidation. They were outgoing. They knew how to speak to one another. They never worried that they might say an incorrect answer. Now, I contrast that experience with the experience that I had when I volunteered in my daughter's 4th grade classroom. I volunteered to help teach the students how to build websites with sites. In the process, there was a lot of repetitive steps. So I would prompt the students, okay, what do we do next? It was always a boy who either blurted out the answer first or raised his hand first. Or if somebody needed help, it was always a boy who jumped up to help his classmate. Now this, despite the fact that as I walked around that classroom looking at the students' Chromebooks, there were several girls who had already completed that step or were already 2 or 3 steps ahead of my instruction. It's a real issue that can be addressed. One thing that I notice, I have 2 girls, and I see how girls talk differently, behave differently, and play differently when it's just the girls versus when boys are around. Whether it's my 6-year-old who will let you know that she does not like boys, and she has no problem telling a boy that and hurting his feelings, or it's my 11-year-old who, if I listen carefully enough to a conversation she's having with a boy, it usually sounds like a head-to-head competition. Now, I don't know if it's our culture in America or it's what we learn at home, but there always seems to be an underlying friction between the sexes that spills over into the classroom. And again, this is a real issue that can be changed if we reimagine our schools. So imagine a school where once a week or more, girls can come together to learn about science, technology, engineering, or math for a day, just the girls. Imagine how their self-esteem will improve as they work together on projects that help them improve in mental math, problem solving, and encourage creativity. Imagine the leadership skills those girls will take back to their classrooms each week because they can see a real-world application of the lessons that they are learning in their regular core classes. You know, I'm the mother of 2 girls, and all they know is mommy builds websites. I've done that their entire life. It's not uncommon to see them looking over my shoulder as I code. As a result, my 11-year-old wants to grow up and be an animator, and her friends, who I've also taught to code, they collaborate on websites. They talk about coding and web development as easily as they talk about clothes and shoes. I do not want them to be statistics. The UC Davis chancellor said, for our economy to thrive, we need more young women to have opportunities to study science, engineering, and mathematics, and pursue careers in these areas. A strong and diverse STEM workforce will drive innovation, economic growth, and generate novel solutions to pressing national and international problems. Well, what part do we play? I believe that as a community, we can reimagine our schools and make this world a better place by implementing single-gender, STEM-based programs for girls in our public schools. We can be a catalyst for change, and there will be no need for our girls right here in the Midlands of South Carolina to be a statistic.